Hey
That's
Jay, how you
good.
doing, pal?
I'm doing good, man. I'm just been working on some projects.
Yeah, as I was speaking with Mary Gibbs earlier in the last panel, I'm contractually obligated to ask, how you doing? Have you been safe and sane while the world has stopped spinning?
Safe, yes, and sane partially.
Reasonably is usually my response to that.
Yeah,
I'm alive and I'm reasonably sane.
yeah. No, I've been working on a lot of projects to keep me, from going crazy, and a lot of music projects, a lot of art projects, of course, and of course, gaming.
Sure. So what are you playing now?
Currently, right now, the games I'm playing are the games that I'm mostly known for playing, which is World of Warcraft, which is the
Sure.
game that I'm an NPC in. But I've also been playing a lot of classic World of Warcraft and another game, which you'll see in some animation right behind me, from a game called Dead by Daylight.
Dead by Daylight. So talk to me about Daylight. What I'm seeing what looks like, boy, and is that Hammerhead? What's the guy?
Pyramid
Oh, there's
Head.
Ash.
Yeah. So Dead by Daylight is an asymmetrical survivor horror game where basically player against player is pitted with four survivors and one killer. Throughout the years this game has come out, they've come out with killers that are licensed killers from many famous horror movies, such as
Gotcha.
Nightmare on Elm Street's Freddy Krueger. Unfortunately, not the Robert Englund Freddy Krueger, but still Freddy Krueger nonetheless. You have Leatherface. They have not the movie Ghostface, but they have the Funko Land mascot of Ghostface. Recently, they added in there with their own backstory, and Pig or Amanda from Saw. Gosh, so many. And of course, recently the original edition was Pyramid Head, and they even have licensed Survivor, which is Ash Williams from, of course, the Evil Dead series.
That's awesome. So it's sort of a watch what I do here. It's sort of a spiritual evolution of the game Evolve, which was
Yes.
kind of 4-on-1 where four people were hunting the monster and one person played the monster.
I think this game came out around the same time, but it
Gotcha.
wasn't as popular as it is now.
Sure. And Evolve has not gained much popularity
Yeah, I
and is
think it's
kind of,
safe to say it's dead.
yeah. Um, so obviously I should probably rewind us for a second here. So Jay, you won the BlizzCon, was it 2017?
2017.
2017 competition, and it was a performance competition. And because of that, you got to be an NPC in WoW. Is that right?
Not because I won the competition. So the
Oh, okay.
every year, every year when there is BlizzCon, they have a contest every year for their talent night. So the talent night consists of people doing cosplay, of course, the actual talent show itself, and of course there's art and videos. So you can submit a video that's about 3 minutes long to make a video that's based on the theme of Blizzard video games. You can also do, of course, the cosplay is the biggest part of the night,
Sure.
but it's called Community Night. And usually every contest has a very specific prize. So if you are the cosplay contest, which is the big event of the night, the cosplayers win a prize money, and on top of that, they get honored in a game based on the cosplay they've done. If you are a talent show contest, you win just prize money. Same thing goes, and a trophy. Same thing goes for the artist and the film. You win a trophy and a prize money event. I would say mine was a really weird situation because when I showed up there, I was really shy and nervous, and it was Chris Hardwick who was the host of the event, from Chris Hardwick from Talking Dead and Nerdist, who was the host of the community night, and him and the judges were pitching this idea like your song sounded like something that should be in the video game, and he said, you know what, screw it, I think if you win tonight, Blizzard should honor you in the game. And literally after I got off the stage, I go backstage and I'm shaking because I have very bad stage fright. Or at the time I had very bad stage fright. And, I saw my friends message me like, did you see Twitter? I'm like, what do you mean? No. Like you're trending for BlizzCon Twitter. What? And there was a petition that went on for Twitter to make me an NPC. It was on the WoW forums and everything. I couldn't
Oh,
believe
dude.
it. Shortly after that, a guy by the name of Greg came over to me, So not Greg. Sorry, I'm thinking of the right person. Gary Plattner. It was Gary Plattner that came over to me. Gary Plattner is the senior background artist at the time at Blizzard Entertainment for World of Warcraft. So he's in charge of like background art for like any of the sceneries you'd see in the world. So like he does amazing panels with his team, and he was like, hey, here's my business card. Maybe in the future we'll talk about maybe actually putting you in as an NPC.
Awesome.
And I was like, oh my God, like this might actually happen. I reached out and I heard like nothing, almost like I would hear like, oh, we'll get back to you when this happens. After months of going on, I heard nothing. I'm like, okay, that's not going to happen. I remember one day waking up and my friend's like, you made it. Like, what do you mean I made it? Like, you made it. Like, what did I make? Am I on the FBI's most wanted list or something?
Again?
I'm like, damn it. But the beta came out for us players. And for those of you that are not familiar with video games, when you play games like an MMO or a new game comes out, there's a beta of the game, which is a testing field for a lot of gamers to come check out, see what's wrong with the game and see how the game is feeling so far. And you can offer kind of criticism to help, fix bugs and other things in the game. So my friends found me in the game and I went to go find my character. I went to go find myself, if you will. And I was blown away. But the thing too about it is it's not even so much as being an NPC in the game. It's like the things that happened after the BlizzCon event itself is what, changed my life literally forever.
Right.
Because it wasn't just I wasn't just going to be this, person that performed. Because, in all honesty, I'm very honest with myself about these kind of things. And I don't think of myself like, oh, this is like a big thing. I'm not some, it's a one-shot wonder situation, right? But it wasn't. I had opportunities that opened up to me. I got invited to go to a convention that's a family convention of StocktonCon, of course, which was SAC Anime, and I got to go work with the Overwatch voice actors on stage and do my podcast, basically in a sense, my podcast on stage, because I got to interview them and ask questions and moderate the panels.
And that's where you and I met, was at SAC Anime, kind of just in the green room, just kind of hanging out in between panels,
munching on pizza.
A lot of pizza. In fact, I've got my SAC Anime notepad that I've been kind of jotting stuff down from. Don't tell Scott that I stole one. So you've parlayed that kind of, how long were you on stage at BlizzCon? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? You've parlayed that into a sort of a mini empire, right? So you've got the podcast, you've been doing panels, but some Q&As and stuff. So you've turned this hard work, obviously, that you'd spent composing and performing the song on stage, and you've parlayed it into, I'm not going to call it a podcast empire, but you've been doing the podcast now for how long?
It's going to be 3 years in 10 days from now. Be officially 3 years of doing this podcast.
Wow. So talk a little bit about the podcast. Tell us, what's it about? What do you do? Who have you had on the show?
Oh man, that's a list. So funny enough, we started off as I always say we, because there's always more than one. I'm like Venom, we are Venom. So I started off this podcast. It was originally a show over at my college campus radio. And it was a horror show. It was originally a horror podcast and metal show, right? Because horror and metal go together. And eventually I was like, I want to talk about more geeky things. So it evolved into a podcast called Blackheart's Tavern at the time.
Okay.
And one of the first guests I had on this was a guy from Blizzard Entertainment by the name of Samwise Didier. He's the senior art director of Blizzard Entertainment. He's been those veteran guy there, and him and I became friends through this podcast. Through doing this podcast, though, it opened up a lot of doors for me because I was now interviewing these guests, and I had experience with interviewing these guests, and I would get to go to conventions as media, and get to go and meet people, take photos with them, and talk with them for a bit. And that's where my first time I ever went to SAC Anime was a media member. This is before my BlizzCon thing and everything like that. And I got to go. I got to interact with. God, I'm terrible with names because it's been so long now. But Zach from the voice actor from Steven Universe. He was one of the first people, and I met him through SAC Anime. And then there was a couple of guests who had been to StocktonCon, who I, met with and talked with, and, they would get on there. So like, if we were going to go down the list of like voice actors in general, just voice actors alone, I've had Steve Bloom, one of the most legendary voice actors in the industry, on my podcast. I've had majority of the cast of Overwatch, Anjali Bhimani, Anjali Bhimani is the voice of Symmetra, and she's now the character in the new big game, Apex Legends. I've had Carolina Ravassa, Sombra, Josh Petersdorf, the voice of Roadhog. Gosh, it goes down the list. Like I've met and worked with now majority of the cast of Overwatch. I've interviewed Rob Paulson at StocktonCon a while back. I actually interviewed Maurice LaMarche, amazing guy, really awesome guy.
I have to say that was the one that I really wanted to meet. I wanted to meet Mo. Unfortunately, I was in the hospital that year. Was that 2 years ago or 3 years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. God, man. Time goes fast when you're not dying in a hospital. And then Mike Millerick, who we were just talking to, wound up being in hospital not too long after StocktonCon. So that was a kind of a bad year for StocktonCon family. What's the name of your podcast? Tell the folks.
So the podcast name is called The Bard's Tavern. And The Bard's Tavern podcast is dedicated to everything geek related you could think of. And that's the best part about it, is when you think of most of these podcasts that most people try to, talk about, and not to knock anyone's podcast, is that if you are a podcast that specifically does like the same thing as everybody else, like, hey, we're a gaming podcast, we're going to talk about the gaming review of X, insert game here. There are like 30,000 people who already do that. There are like 30,000 people who are talking about the same game that you are already either have an audience or still trying to find an audience and to build that. But if you have something that's more unique to your podcast, then you have listeners coming in. And it takes a while for it to happen, right? I didn't just have, what I have now. So right now I have an average of over 3,000 downloads for the podcast every time I have an episode, which is a lot. Yeah. I was like, holy crap. We started off and we only had like 12 for like the longest time for the first entire year. Of course, the Blizzard stuff, to help take it off. But, most of my guests who've been from voice actors to bands. We've had bands like Sabaton, Unleash the Archers. We've even introduced, not on the episode of the podcast, but we've interviewed on live in person. We've interviewed Dropkick Murphys.
Oh, wow.
Tim Brennan from Dropkick Murphys. Dave Ellefson from Megadeth. A lot of people say they like the podcast feel interview because it doesn't feel like your typical interview, because it feels like two friends talking in a bar together.
Sure, it becomes organic rather than just, I've only got, the time and the opportunity to ask 3 or 4 questions. It can turn into, just like the panels that you've done at SAC Anime or StocktonCon, or the one that we're doing now, becomes more of a conversation than it is just, sitting in front of 30 reporters asking, the same 5 questions over and over again.
Oh, exactly. And that's the thing too. Every time we start the episode off, I'll be like, okay, guys, welcome to the Bard's Tavern. My name is Jay, and we have so-and-so here. And we're going to go through some of these boring old questions that everybody asks every single interview. And then we're going to get to the fun stuff. So we'll go through like the list, and then we'll go into the more deeper kind of fun stuff. And the best part about it is, it makes it easy on me, is when the guest wants to talk a lot. Because I can just like record. I don't say anything for like half an hour because they've been going on for half an hour.
Right. Yeah,
I mean, easy.
To be honest with you, Jay, I was really looking forward to this panel with you because I knew that I wasn't going to have to do a whole lot of heavy lifting. Just again, knowing you from shows and being able to just have those quick little conversations with you backstage. I know that Jay knows how to kind of carry a conversation and carry the room. So I'm actually turning it around on you, where you just have to, you have to do the heavy lifting this time.
Making me work.
So the Bard's Tavern, it's a podcast. I saw that. Did I see you with Kevin Smith recently?
Yes, I got to talk with Kevin Smith about podcasting for a little bit, but that wasn't for my podcast. That was actually for a big AMA event that he was doing. And gotcha. Normally they pick people randomly, but the person who was running it, he saw my question. He's like, I really like your question. Like, this is one of the good questions we've ever had on here. And I ended up having probably about almost 15 to 20 minutes time with him, which I feel bad for everybody else who was there, but because like I took up majority of the time. But we were talking about podcasting. He was asking about my podcast. And prior to this, because before this time I had talking with Kevin, had a video that was sent to me. My buddy of mine, he's like, he knew, he knows, I guess, the agent of Jason Mewes. And I guess through that guy, he was able to get like a hold through Kevin. I don't know how it happened, but he got me a video, which was like, hey man, I heard you're trying to lose weight and all this other stuff. And I thought it was a Cameo thing, but like, there's no Cameo brand logo.
That's what I thought it was.
It wasn't. Yeah, it was but like when I hopped on the little AMA, he's like, oh, you're Jay the Bard, from the thing. I'm like, oh shoot. But we talked for a bit, and it is one of those things where I lost my composure a little bit because this guy's my hero.
Sure.
And he's like, anytime you need like advice, feel free to try to hit me up. So yeah, I mean, you got to talk to my favorite director.
And I feel like that with Kevin Smith, he's not the kind of guy who would just say that as lip service. I get the feeling that, if you were to reach out to him, he would legitimately and really want to have a conversation with you and, talk about a guy who's going to do the heavy lifting. I think with Kevin Smith, you just kind of ask him a 5-word question and he's going to just kind of go with it and talk for 20, 30 minutes.
Well, you guys had, speaking with Kevin too, you guys had Ming Chen yesterday, right?
We did. Here. Yeah.
I met Ming Chen back at Silicon Valley Comic Con. It was the first convention I ever did press coverage of under my horror show name. And I interviewed Ming and I got to talk with him for a bit. He's just so sweet and nice. And he told me about Kevin, like, how he met Kevin. And he's like, if you ever really want to tell Kevin something, he's like, reach out to him on Twitter. He reads his Twitter. Yeah. And, all the stuff that Ming said was very much so true. And when I was talking to Kevin, he's like, oh, did Ming tell you how he met him? I'm like, yeah, he said it was like, you had the website, the VSQ website going, and, he eventually you hired him for that. And he's the one that kind of got you into podcasting.
And look where he is now. Yeah. And he's got his whole little mini empire that he runs out of his house. Where do you see the Bard's Tavern going? I mean, you've been doing it for a couple years now. You've got 3,000 downloads every episode. Are you doing this weekly, or is it just sort of a catch can?
It's honestly whenever I feel like doing it. But yeah, since you mentioned that, I am starting a new show that is a spinoff. I guess you could call it a spinoff, but I hate spinoff, like saying a spinoff. But the thing with the Bard's Tavern is I always like having guests on there, and I don't like talking about myself half the time because I'm lazy. But I wanted to start a show that kind of goes back to my roots and when I got into college radio and, what got me into podcasting in the first place, which is horror. So actually starting in the next 2 weeks, my new podcast show, and I love going with these cheesy names. It's called The Tavern of Terror. So think back to like those old Vincent Price, kind of like feeling horror shows. And it's more so I'm going to be bringing my friends on, but not only my friends, but people who want to submit their stories and want to tell these stories live on stream and such. And that's where I'm kind of aiming for to kind of grow with that, is like to grow the podcast. But right now, in terms of the Bard's Tavern, it's doing fine on its own. I've been very busy with other projects, mostly music and voice acting. Lots of voice acting.
So I apologize. I froze there for a little bit. We just lost power to the house. So I am now broadcasting over my phone's Wi-Fi signal. Okay. So if we get cut off, I really apologize. And just, I'm going to let Mike know we lost power. So I apologize if we get broken up here. I did lose about a minute and a half of what you were talking about there with your new thing. So I'm not going to ask you to repeat yourself, but I am going to say if I do, talk over something that you just brought up, it's not on purpose.
Okay, I understood. To catch up then, launching a new horror podcast called The Tavern of Terror. Very much so like in the story, like Vincent Price kind of feel, but I'll be bringing on guests to tell their like stories and stuff like that of like the supernatural or other. But the Bard's Tavern will be continuing on. I just been focusing on voice acting more and music, but I do have some great guests lined up for the Bard's Tavern. In fact, I'm working on getting on my buddy back on, because my buddy, he's like one of the top streamers on twitch.tv. He's been
Okay.
on the podcast 3 times. This will be his 4th. I'm trying to bring him on for an anniversary edition. So details on that soon, hopefully. But other than that, man, I've been working on voice acting and music. That's literally my whole thing. That's what I've been doing to
That's
make money
awesome.
lately.
So can you talk about what voice acting you're doing? Can you talk about any of the projects you might be working on?
Yes, I can. So I am part of a YouTube animation network called Salmonation. He is an artist that used to do the Onage prank videos. If you ever watch the old Onage prank videos from like early 2000s to even now, he used to do the animations for that.
Okay.
But I do voiceover work for his animated parody series, which even though it's a parody, it's actually official kind of now, because he's been paid by the company that makes the game right behind me, Dead by Daylight. I
Gotcha.
voice for the animation, the cartoon parody series for Dead by Daylight.
Are there any particular characters that you voice, or?
Yes. So if you look behind me, I
Yep.
voice Ash Williams for the parody
Oh,
series.
what a coup. I mean,
And
he's like kind of when you think of a horror protagonist, if you don't think of Ash Williams, I don't know who else you might think of.
in the actual game, though, he's actually voiced by Bruce Campbell, which is,
Of course.
I just want to meet Bruce one day, but I voice you in the cartoon.
Right.
And then I voice the big guy on the drums right there, the Oni. I voice the Oni. I voice Ash. And I also voice now a new character, not a new character, but a character that was re-brought back into the parody series. I voice the pig, a.k.a. Amanda from Saw, for the parody series.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So we've got just a couple minutes left here. We've lost power to the building. I'm glad I'm on my laptop here. I was going to ask, where can people find you on the socials? Are you on Instagram? Are you on Twitter? Obviously, you've got
On all of them.
The Bard's Tavern. Are you just at the Bard's Tavern?
No. On all my social media, if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Jay the Bard TV on Twitter. On Instagram, it's Jay the Bard. YouTube, Jay the Bard. Twitch, Jay the Bard.
Are you doing a Patreon or anything like that?
No, I don't do Patreons. I just, if people want to, come listen to the work, it's going to be there, because I don't want to have people pay me and expecting something, and then I'm not able to get it done for them in the time frame. I know I'm just not a big fan of Patreons.
That's a really good way to think about it too. I mean, obviously, if you're not going to be able to do something that people are paying for, why force them into doing something and force yourself in a position where you might be giving them less than quality entertainment. I see you've got your guitar. Would you mind maybe playing us out?
Yeah, sure. It's a song I hope you guys know. This ain't a song for the broken hearted. It's a silent prayer for the faith departed. I ain't gonna be just a face in the crowd. You're gonna hear my voice when I shout it out loud. It's my life, and it's now or never. I ain't gonna live forever. I just wanna live while I'm alive. My heart is like the open highway that Frankie said I did it my way. I just wanna live while I'm alive. It's my life. There you go, man.
That was amazing. That was some great Bon Jovi there.
I
Hey,
love Bon Jovi.
Who doesn't? So again, Jay, thank you so much for joining us, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. Check out the Bard's Tavern. How many episodes do you have now?
54.
54. So if you haven't been listening to the Bard's Tavern, you've got 54 or so episodes and however many hours that is of some quality listening entertainment.